Alright, so, us is quickly becoming a theme when I do these kinds of streams. I want to start off by giving you guys a bit of a history lesson. So, a lot of you may remember a channel called Watcher. They became big about a few months, 1 or 2 months away from today. So, essentially, Watcher was a group of ex-BuzzFeed employees who got together to create a channel of their own. And up until around like 2 months ago, their channel was popping off. I'm talking consecutive videos spread across multiple months that had easily more than a million views each. I'm talking about a Patreon, a paid Patreon with, more than 10,000, more than 12,000 paying members. So again, this was a channel that was massive around the time until April 20th, when they decided to release a video telling all of their fans that they would be removing all of their YouTube content and instead moving it onto a separate streaming platform that they had made. A streaming platform where you had the choice of paying either $6 a month or $60 a year to watch just their content. Now, understandably, and again, if you didn't know who Watcher was before, this is probably the time where you would have become aware of it. Because as soon as they made this announcement, their fans absolutely rioted. In the month of April alone, that transition period, they lost 90k subscribers. 90k active subscribers. And also, their video views ever since that announcement have fallen off a cliff. Not only that, but every commentary YouTuber and their dog and mum decided to come in from the sidelines and dunk on them during this whole fiasco. Understandably so, because again, this was an absolutely idiotic move. Why the hell would your audience pay you money to view just your content, whereas before they were accustomed to viewing it all for free on YouTube? And also the fact that they could view everyone else's content on YouTube for free as well. It was just an awful business proposition. Not worth it for the audience at all. And there's one video that another creator made that I want to point out in particular. And that is a video by Donna, formerly known as Psych IRL, called Watcher, Why Prioritizing Profit at All Cost Betrays Fans. So, the reason why I want to shout out this video is because in it, she brings up a concept that is pretty influential in psychology called Reactance Theory. Basically, Reactance Theory dictates that when an audience feels that their freedom is being restricted by a source or by another body of people, that audience is then motivated to reassert their freedom by voicing their discontent and or retaliating against the party that they view as guilty for infringing on their freedom. Now, Watcher became one of the most iconic case studies in recent memory of this happening. However, we could see in real time Reactance Theory being applicable to Nijisanji when they chose to cancel their concert on the 26th of June. And the reason why I say that is because for quite a while, this event that they'd been promising fans, the most dedicated fans who were actually bothered to not only buy tickets, but possibly fly out of their home countries, go to Anime Expo, and watch this event. When they announced that they were going to cancel only 10 days before the event was supposed to go live, that was a massive middle finger towards that dedicated audience. And for the first time, I think, you started to get hardcore Niji fans actually speak up on social media about how displeased they were with this particular move. You had people saying, I'm like a jerk. I spent so much money on flight tickets and hotels, and now you tell me that the concert is cancelled? I bought the AX ticket because it requires one to enter the concert. Who will be responsible for refunding that? It's ridiculous. I'm happy they care about our safety, but I feel so terrible for the people that bought plane tickets and can't go. Imagine the hundreds of dollars they spent that they probably can't get back. This has to be a joke. My friend and I spent lots of money on expensive flight and hotels just to see this. Why is this announced a week before? I can't get refunds on my flight and hotel. So all of these reactions unanimously were clamoring about the fact that, again, even though Niji did state in their announcement that they would be refunding tickets, that was not the only cost that came along with choosing to enter this event, choosing to see this event. And by infringing on that choice, by invalidating the dedication that these fans had committed to expressing by doing this, Niji had set themselves up to receive backlash from a group of people that they had almost never seen it from before. So, the thing that really bugs me about seeing this announcement, just seeing the general reactions to it as well, is that this was not a one-off event. This cancellation of Summer Jam and whatever the other one was called, they've done this before. This cancellation was the punchline to a joke that Niji themselves had set up all the way back at the beginning of last year when they were supposed to have their AR Live concert. And we can start to see, looking back, a very clear pattern between the way things were going. So with the AR Live cancellation, it was first announced in, I believe, January the 29th, and then on February 2nd, January 23rd, and then on February 2nd, Niji posted this announcement on Twitter where they said, "Thank you for supporting Niji-en as always. We regret to inform you that due to various circumstances, including coronavirus outbreaks, leading to delays in shooting and video production, we have decided to cancel the live concert." And the thing that immediately caught everybody's eye is that the talents, who, I would like to remind you, actually did fly out and record something with Niji, these talents started being pissy on Twitter. "Vox, everyone is so tired, give your Oshi some love, we're all devastated by the event being cancelled due to COVID. Skull emoji. Ike, well, I guess there it is. COVID. Alright then, sure. I'm sorry to everyone looking forward to everything. And then, Mysterious. COVID, huh? Alright. And then the same thing, sorry to all the fans. Now, with this particular event, the thing I want you to take away from it is that this very clearly signaled that, one, Niji's reason for cancelling this event could be called into question. Two, they didn't really care if their cancellations impacted their talents. Because I would like to remind you that even though this event was cancelled last minute, quote unquote last minute, it wasn't last minute for the fans. The event was scheduled for, I believe, May or something around then. But again, this was months away from when the event was actually supposed to go forward, so it didn't really affect the fans that much. It only affected the talents. Also, something I find really funny is the fact that the largest responses throwing shade at Niji all came from male talents. I don't think I saw a post where it was a female talent doing the same thing. Although, to be fair, if a female talent had done that, I think they would have terminated her. So, and then we get to the next thing, which is the Offkai Expo incident. See, that wasn't the only event where Niji had set up fan and talent expectations and then had them cancelled apparently last minute. Offkai Expo was the next instance of that happening. So on December 20th of last year, they announced that Ethyria would be appearing at Offkai. And then March 5th, when the backlash towards Niji around the Selene incident was at its peak, they announced, Offkai specifically, announced that Niji and Offkai had made the joint decision for Ethyria to pull out. Now, at the time that this announcement went live, there wasn't really that much backlash directed towards Niji, especially not from their core fan base, because the way that this came off was that a lot of people assumed that Offkai was in the wrong for continuing to sell tickets up until the time that this announcement was made, even though those tickets were being refunded regardless. So Again, a last-minute cancellation, and a last-minute cancellation that would impact some of the fans that had decided to fly over and, book accommodation to attend this event. But because it was Offkai making this announcement rather than Niji, they caught the brunt of the backlash. However, I would like to reiterate that this was a joint statement made by Offkai and Niji. So, this was our first sample of how Niji would... This was yet another sample, of how Niji wants to word its communications surrounding their reasoning for cancelling an event. And you would notice that the way that it's worded is really vague. Offkai Expo believes that recent events have resulted in an environment where Ethyria appearing would not be conducive to a positive convention experience for any color inks, livers, or our attendees. This is a really vague way of stating what they mean, because not a positive convention experience. What does that mean? At the time, people weren't really bothered by the fact that it was vague because everyone knew about the whole Selene incident. Everyone knew what they meant when they said a bad convention experience, because people just wouldn't want to see them there. However, I would like to point out that the reason why people actually understood what they meant in this statement was not because the wording itself was clear, but because the context around the message made it clear. So far, we've learned three things. One, Niji might, at a moment's notice, cancel events while giving reasons that are varying degrees of doubtful. Two, that they don't really seem to care about their talents when they cancel these events. And three, the notices themselves are worded in a very vague way. Now, with two, that could just be coincidence. A third example is what we would need to prove intent. But I want to take a bit of a gander away from just cancellations and spend a little bit of time talking about why the backlash is so huge, why they've built up this avalanche to collapse in on themselves. And that's because part of that is because of the fact that Niji has a very consistent pattern of over-promising, over-hyping, and then under-delivering. So you will remember this infamous CEO apology addressing your concerns by Riku all the way back in February. And this quote, "I deeply regret this outcome and will be rethinking how our communication in English is done." I feel like this has come to very quickly define a lot of their actions since then. But anyways, the parts of this particular apology video that I want to draw attention to are these parts. So other than content for the 3D event in July and the cancelled Niji AR Live, there has been a lack of 3D live content. We have spent the last year recruiting and working on strengthening the EN staff so we can better provide content for Niji EN. As a company, we intend to do everything in our ability to support Nijisanji EN and meet the fans' expectations. So, again, a lot of this focused on hyping up the idea that their main way of repaying fans for their dedication, their main way of redeeming themselves after the mess that was the Selene debacle, was going to be make more content, make better content. We are hiring people to make content for you, the fans. And yet they've gone on to randomly cancel events since then. Cancel events with either little notice, little reason, or a combination of both. Thaja, thank you for the 10. I want to add something. About 4 months ago on 4chan, a poster said that the towns were trying to turn their fans against Niji antis by using other sources to paint the fans. Again, I will touch on that in a little bit. This whole dynamic about like Niji either intentionally or unintentionally weaponizing their remaining fan base. But I don't think it is the same way that 4chan would portray it out to be. And also because the boards are prone to rats that are perhaps a little bit distorted from reality, I suppose, is the way I would put it. But again, it is a valid point that I will be bringing up in a second. So this was an example of Niji setting fan expectations too high, misleading their fan base about the things that they were committed to doing. However, it's not just their fans that they've been misleading. it's their shareholders as well. Because when you look through their Q4 Q&A, all of their answers to these questions about like expanding outside of Japan or operating outside of Japan. So, for example, the question, how does it feel to be mainstream? We would like to work on media strategies and content approaches that can reach wider ranges of people so that VTubers can become a form of content that represents Japan. Again, a very forward-facing, outward-looking perspective on what they want to do as a business. Overseas growth strategy. To build a relationship of trust with our customers, we believe we need to continue to strengthen the creation of content that will captivate our customers, including 3D unveilings, music content, and tournament-like content. Again, they are reiterating that they want more events. They see more events as the future of their business strategy. And then, long-term vision. Furthermore, we believe that there is high demand for Japanese anime content overseas, and we aim to expand the VTuber market by working hard to expand VTubers overseas. And finally, areas that will contribute to this fiscal year's performance. As with other areas, we plan to significantly increase both the scale and number of events compared to the previous year. So, a lot of people in this section in particular focused on that last sentence. We have not factored in overseas growth in our plans. And a lot of people read that sentence and concluded that this meant that they were effectively withdrawing all support for EN. And again, I can understand why you would think that. However, as a result of that fixation on this sentence, people kind of overlooked the next one where they said, this does not mean that we will not work on it, but we see this growth as an upside. So what that essentially means is they're not really setting out with the goal of expanding overseas in mind, but if it happens, they're happy. But more importantly, to shareholders, they were basically stating that they were not going to give up on the overseas market. This was a promise, this was a commitment that they would now need to follow through, at least in front of their shareholders, that they were going to continue working on their overseas expansion. And again, I can see in chat, a lot of people are immediately calling out this as a lie. But I want you to keep that in the back of your mind. The idea that now Niji has set up a situation where they need to at least appear like they are going to be taking overseas expansion seriously. So, fast forward to May 12th, when they announce alongside with Anime Expo that this event is going to happen. And 3 days ago when they announced that they were going to be canceling it. Now, if you look at the announcement itself, this is an important update regarding the Nijisanji EN Summer Jam and Welcome to Wonder World concert in LA, originally scheduled for July 6 to 7 at the Peacock Theater during Anime Expo 2024. And then I'm going to switch over to this because the text is a little bit clearer. While we were incredibly excited to bring you our first ever live concert in North America, recent developments have made it clear that creating the optimal environment for an unforgettable experience for our fans and our livers is no longer feasible. We understand this news may be disappointing, and we sincerely apologize for any inconvenience it may cause. We are dedicated to finding an appropriate path moving forward for all involved, most importantly, our fans. That last bit, most importantly, our fans, that rings real hollow when you actually look at the date that this was posted, which was, again, I can't stress this enough, 10 days before the thing was supposed to go live. So, they did say, however, at the end, full refunds for the concert tickets will be processed. We're also working on special perks to show our appreciation for your continued support, and also they state here that they are going to live stream a free version of the Niji EN Summer Jam for all audiences, not just the people who bought tickets. And they're still working on what's going on for the other concert that they were going to plan for their JP livers. And the thing that I want to sort of point out here is, even though they're willing to refund tickets, even though they're willing to essentially live stream the content, the same content that the audience would have seen had they showed up in that theater, there is an actual reason as to why that is not enough. Why a concert experience is so important to this whole this whole thing coming together. And that is tied to a media concept known as uses and gratifications theory. Now, what this theory essentially dictates is that when people consume media, they don't just do it mindlessly for no reason. Users engage with media because they have a specific need, a specific purpose that they want to fulfill. And the needs that are listed, according to uses and gratifications theory, are these: relaxation, habit, escapism, trend chasing, self-expression, companionship, social interaction. And this is the reason why, regardless of the fact that they still give you the same content, the same access to that content, it's still not enough. Because having a concert experience, regardless of how small your audience, regardless of how empty the concert hall is, you still get uses and gratifications that you cannot achieve from just watching a live stream at home. You get things like self-expression, where you are able to express that you are still a dedicated Nijisanji fan in front of other people who are also expressing that they are dedicated Nijisanji fans. You have things like companionship, because again, regardless of how small that audience is, regardless of how much the sound from the front of the hall echoes throughout it, you still get that sense of companionship by seeing yourself echoed in the eyes of like other people who are similarly as interested as you are. And then of course you have the social interaction that, again, you can say that you have like some degree of social interaction in chat. Like I read your like chat messages, for example, right? But at the same time, you get that sort of face-to-face interaction with other fans that you cannot emulate in a live stream when you're just watching at home. So having an IRL event like this concert adds an extra dimension onto the way that people consume and enjoy your media that you cannot get anywhere else, or just through the way that you would normally deliver it. So that is why when Niji announces, oh, we'll refund you your tickets, we'll live stream this event so you can still watch it. That is why, aside ignoring the whole not paying for the accommodation or flight fees or whatever, that is why this compensation feels more like a consolation prize than a proper piece of compensation. So, I mean, yeah, chat and IRL is different. It sounds very self-explanatory. It sounds really obvious, but it's still worth pointing out because of how often people seem to miss this idea that people consume content for different reasons, and different forms of engaging with that content will satisfy different needs, and they're not interchangeable, at least not exactly. The next thing that I want to sort of give you guys a little bit of a refresher on is a model that I introduced in my Offkai stream, where I wanted to sort of explain how it is that social media platforms affect the way that messaging works. So, the thing about Niji's announcement that they were cancelling the concert, the reason why it comes off so tone deaf is because the way that communication works on social media has changed the way that we communicate in a number of ways. First, everything has an audience. Whenever you say something, there are always going to be more people watching than the people that you're aiming to communicate with. And that audience will always be there and always be waiting for you to say something. The next thing is that even though that process of sending a message, you have your sender, the medium you use to send it, and then the message itself. What social media has done is that it's made the platform that you put that message on, the medium that you use to express that message, inseparable from the receiver of your message. And again, what that means is when you launch your message onto that platform and it sticks there, people aren't just viewing this message in isolation. They are viewing it in the context of everything you've said and done up until that point, as well as everything that other people are saying in the same space, in the same context. And the reason why this is important is, like I said before, this was not a one-off incident. This was part of a running gag that Niji had been pulling for at least the last year. You have this very clear pattern of setup and payoff just like you would a joke, where, again, you announce AR Live, you cancel AR Live. You announce Offkai, you cancel Offkai. You promise that you're going to focus on overseas events. You promise you're going to focus on overseas events. And then, at the same time, you choose to cancel those events. So there is a very clear pattern being set up here for anyone who is able to actually look through what has been going on social media, on your platforms, etc., for the last year or so. And again, the platform you've used to communicate, Twitter especially, is very... it's not good at a lot of things, but it's good at preserving the things that you've said in the past. And when you put together everything that Niji has said and done in the past, it is not a very flattering picture on what they're doing now. So, when we're talking about the way that Niji does its PR, there's a few things in this particular example that they could have done differently. But in order to dissect where they went wrong and what they could have done instead, we need to first remind ourselves of what constitutes good PR. And again, a PR expert, a PR professor, would be able to put this in a way that is a lot more detailed, gives it a lot more depth, and probably a lot better than what I'm about to do. But generally, just for the purposes of giving you guys this information, you can condense the main features of good PR into three broad categories, three main traits. First, timeliness, being able to communicate something in a timely manner, not too soon, being able to communicate it really as quick as possible after whatever causes that need for communication happens. Then you have clarity. And this is the thing that a lot of corporations miss, because everyone assumes that clarity just means that you word your message in a way that is clear. And that is a part of that. However, another part of clarity that people often miss is the context within which your message is going to be seen and interpreted. You have to make sure that when you are looking at the environment in which you post your message, that there aren't other things that people are saying or doing that is going to invalidate what you've said. Because it doesn't matter how well crafted your PR response is. If it doesn't match the context of where you're posting that message, all of that work can be for nothing. And we see Niji mess up on both parts of that definition of clarity in their announcement. And then the third part, again, proactivity is a very underrated aspect of PR, because when people do this, you don't get to see it as an audience member. This is all the work that goes on behind the scenes to make sure that things are running smoothly, that you've expressed to everyone involved that you actually care about their well-being despite not being a human being yourself, because again, remember, you're a corporation, and you are committed to making sure that they are happy, that they are at least being able to exist comfortably or engage with you comfortably. This is all the stuff like having good managers, having an ethical promotion strategy, making sure that when you promise that you are going to do events, that you actually follow through with doing those events in the manner that you promised. And again, that doesn't sound like it would be part of PR, but it is, because when it works, it's the part of PR that you never realize that is going on, that you never register as an audience member. The next thing that we're going to need to take into account are the circumstances surrounding Niji's announcement. And here, I want to give a few assumed circumstances. And this is, again, interpreting what they've done and what they've said in the best possible light, in the best faith interpretation of what's gone on here. So, first assumed circumstance. Nijisanji will only be refunding ticket costs, which means that while they are going to refund the tickets, they are not going to pay for anything like accommodation or flight fees, which was, again, something that caused a lot of fans consternation. The second, all concert footage is already prepared and ready to be streamed. Again, this was a pre-recorded concert, and it's a pre-recorded concert that Niji has expressed that they are willing to stream live at a later date for free. So again, we can go in with the assumption that everything was already ready to go, but for some reason or other, they still decided to cancel that concert. The third thing that we're going to assume is the decision to cancel was made prior to the day of the announcement. We don't know how long prior, but it was definitely decided on before they posted the announcement, and that the concert experience, in quotation marks, was the prime reason for cancellation. Now, with all of these assumptions in mind, and granted we are being quite generous with especially this last one, let's actually dissect what Niji ended up saying with their announcement. So, important update regarding Nijisanji Summer Jam, Welcome to Wonderworld concert in LA. So this was the official one that they linked to in their Twitter post. But I want to focus mainly on this part that is in bold. While we were incredibly excited to bring you our first ever concert, recent developments have made it clear that creating the optimal environment, there's that wording again, the same wording that was used in the Offkai announcement when they cancelled Ethyria's appearance. Again, optimal environment for an unforgettable experience is no longer feasible. What the hell does that even mean? That's just word salad. And again, you can say that the experience is not going to be great, that you think that the experience is not going to be great and that warrants you cancelling. But there are a lot of reasons why an experience at a concert or an experience at a convention might not be great. And that was exactly the problem that Niji ran into, because when you aren't clear with your messaging, when you say something and the public doesn't immediately understand what it is you're referring to, the public will then decide on what you're saying for you. And we saw that happening on Twitter after they posted this as well. So for a while now, there's been sprinklings of speculation, mostly among the diehard Niji fans, without any support, mind you. There is no evidence that this is actually a real concern, that it was something to do with a safety issue at AX. Now, you have this post from Ruko saying, Niji cancelled the AX concert, refunded the sold tickets 100%, and will broadcast everything for free on YouTube with a special segment for everyone who bought the tickets. I respect them for putting the fans' safety on top. But my god, if it wasn't for those bullies, I'm unable to go to LA. All I did was buy the online ticket, so it's actually better for me to suddenly get the concert for free, but I'm angry on behalf of the fans who booked their plane tickets or bought convention tickets just for it. The fans who were threatened to be harassed at the con. Again, there is no evidence besides just random tweets from no-name accounts that there would be any sort of harassment or safety issue. And the thing that I want to point out that is pretty important to keep in the back of your mind is that, one, when AX did speak up about this, all they did was repost Niji's announcement word for word. They haven't said anything themselves, which tells me a few things. One, if there is a safety concern, at least in AX's opinion, there is no real safety concern. Even in Niji's announcement, if you actually look at the words that they use, they also do not indicate that there is any sort of safety concern. They just say a non-optimal environment for an unforgettable experience, which again could mean a number of things. The second thing that tells me is that this decision was most likely not made by AX, because otherwise Niji would have said something. The fact that it's only Niji's words saying that this has been cancelled for whatever reason, and that AX is just parroting what Niji is saying, indicates to me at least that this was a decision that was completely made by Nijisanji. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, you also had people like Proctor coming in and saying, this is PR nonsense. Here's official concert hall data regarding the many tickets they sold. Grey is sold, green is available. Only the 5 stands in the middle were available to begin with. As you can see, they're cancelling because this was a total bomb. And again, when you look at that diagram, it is really grim, and it lends credence to the idea that this was ultimately a business-related decision, a profit-driven decision, not a safety one. Because, as a lot of people have pointed out before, if you were really concerned about the safety of the fans, number one, this was an event that only Niji fans were able to attend, because this was, they sold tickets for this, you had to buy a ticket for this. And two, if it was a safety concern, why would they not touch the booth that Niji had at Offkai? Sorry, not at Offkai, at Anime Expo. So again, that whole safety thing does not really seem to hold water. But this profit-driven thing kind of does. Because Niji's behavior up until this point, when they cancelled events, has made it very clear that they don't really care about the talents that are involved in the events. They don't really seem to care. And the fact that they posted this 10 days before the event was supposed to take place, that signaled to fans that they didn't really care about them either. So not only were EN audiences kind of appalled at this decision and confused as to why it took place, this even spread onto the Japanese side of things, where you had Japanese users of, I believe, Bing, talking about their response to this, which is, a lot of people on X are saying that it was cancelled to protect fans and performers due to a threat. But since they're going through with the booth, I think that's wrong. I mean, the fans over there will be exposed to danger then. Rather, with many other companies participating, if there was a threat which warranted the cancelling of the concert, they would have explicitly issued an alert. And Yahoo. And yeah, they are correct with this. Because again, if there is a genuine safety concern, AX would have a duty to say as such to everyone attending. Now, you look at some of the other posts, and it's starting to echo what Proctor said as well. There's some information floating around that ticket sales weren't very good. There's speculations of threats and such of that, but it's the case they'd cancel the booths too, so it's probably for other reasons. And again, it surely seems that the seats were poorly filled played an influence. And again, you have some people explicitly comparing it to HoloLive, where it said, Holo sold out in 30 minutes, Niji barely sold at all. North American? ? In some way, it became an unforgettable experience. And what I want you to take away from this is that because of the fact that they worded their announcement so vaguely, that the reason they gave for such a short notice cancellation was so non-committal, they've now created a breeding ground for people to post their own speculations, and it holds just as much weight as what they have said, because they really didn't say anything. Now, previously, when it comes to the Offkai situation, we did note that the so-called clarity of that particular announcement was more reliant on the context around it giving what Niji said meaning than the actual words themselves. Because again, word soup, it was really vague. It also said something about not a positive convention experience, but because of all of the context, all of the stuff that was going on around it, it made sense to the people reading it. And in that regard, I do want to just give a quick disclaimer that what I'm about to suggest in terms of how they could have salvaged this is not ethical, because it would revolve around them sort of covertly leaning into the rumor that there might be a safety concern, or that they are worried about the way that their livers or their audiences would feel attending this event, which, as we have very clearly seen, is not true. However, people who watch my Offkai stream will know this, because I've stated this before as well. At a certain point, good PR, as in ethical PR, is no longer possible, and you just go into damage control. This cancellation is very much in damage control. So, they actually had a few opportunities in the last few weeks to make this announcement sooner than they did. And this is purely based off of a context-based messaging to give their otherwise vaguely worded announcement clarity. And these were the three events that stood out to me. The first opportunity that they had to make this announcement and have their audience, or at least their core audience, instantly know what they were talking about would be when Anime Expo first released the floor plan for their entertainment hall on May 26. Again, that is a whole month prior to when they actually posted this announcement. And the reason why I say that they could have posted it here is because here is where it became evident that Niji was put right next to V Shoujo and the Doki Bird stand. And they have pulled out events because of close proximity to Doki Bird, or at least in the eyes of the public, that has been the reason behind them pulling out of events before. So if at the time that AX posted this, they had posted this announcement as well, people would have instantly assumed that this is what they were talking about, and their closest fans probably would have understood, accepted it, not least because a month notice is way better for like getting refunds on accommodation and flight tickets than a week's notice. The second opportunity fell under the same vein. This tweet by Parrot4chan, where he said, "So Doki is going to be appearing at iBuyPower X Heights booth at Anime Expo, right next to VShoujo and, oh god, skull emoji." So this was the second opportunity that Niji had to use that exact same reason to back out, right? Where, sure, Anime Expo had posted this before, but it didn't really get that much attention. But now, other creators were starting to draw attention to this fact as well. And if Niji had their finger on the pulse, if they were keeping track of what was going on in the context of the environment where they were going to be making this announcement, on Twitter especially, this would have been the next opportunity for them to do that. But they missed it. The thing is, that same week there was a different one, arguably one that would have been more potent had they decided to use it, and that is the animation made by Kikino. Now, this is the version that's still up, where it's just like, Dokiba doing the, the brain rot dear friend dance, and Mint watching. However, the original version of this animation was a little bit more controversial, because instead of Mint, there was a very beat up and exhausted looking Ethyria, and a similarly beat up and exhausted looking Vox watching on instead. And it generated a lot of controversy around how this was, again, promoting a sense of toxicity surrounding the dynamic between Niji and Dokibird, even though Dokibird herself has made very explicit on all of her accounts that she is not interested in beefing with Nijisanji. She doesn't care about Nijisanji. She's more than moved on and been able to prosper and succeed outside of it. But at the same time, this original animation caused a lot of a stir. It was very obviously poking fun not only at Niji but at specific talents. Now, regardless of if you think those talents deserve it or not, it's not a great look for it's not a great look for the person making it and promoting it, first off, because it is very vitriolic. And also, people would have assumed if Niji had announced that they were backing out after this was posted and after the initial controversy around this, that Niji was at least expressing some sort of concern towards their talents. Because I'm pretty sure that I don't remember exactly what the talent roster for this concert was, but I would assume that Ethyria would be a part of it. So, again, they had an opportunity here to mask their announcement underneath the guise of finally taking the step, the commitment to caring for their talents somehow. But, yet again, they missed the boat. The next thing that really impedes the clarity of their message is all of the stuff that I talked about earlier about setting expectations too high. So, this is more explicitly linked to the later half of that announcement that they posted. "We truly value your passion for Nijisanji Ien and Nijisanji. We're taking this opportunity to listen to your concerns and feedback and work together to create an even more positive, united Nijisanji Ien and Nijisanji experience. Thank you for your understanding and continued support." This was the section where they are really doubling down on the idea that they actually care about the fans, that they actually care and want to repay you for being dedicated, being invested. And again, when you're talking about clarity, you need to look at the context surrounding the message you post, which includes everything you've said before you post that message. And when you look at the whole cancellation of this event, it flies directly in the face of everything that they've said before, especially in their shareholder Q&As, where they've said, "We have once again recognized that there is a certain number of people who continue to support us, and we will first focus on those people." This is them very clearly stating that they are aware that their audience has shrunk, and they will commit everything to ensuring that audience is prioritized above all else. Again, not a great look when your cancellation 1 week before your event affects these people the most. And then again, in the whole section about reviving Nijisanji Ien after their whole extended PR disaster throughout February, May, and the subsequent months, they've said, by continuing to provide attractive content, we hope to strengthen the relationship of trust with our fans. So again, a lot of this Q&A revolved around saying our fan base has shrunk, but we are putting more importance on them. We are going to make sure they are okay. And then you look at everything else that they've said since then, everything that they've done since then. That doesn't really make a lot of sense when you again look at the fact that this was only posted on June 26th and the performance was supposed to take place on July 6th. Not only that, but when they offer to refund the tickets, the problem is, however great your production is, however well put together your live stream is, it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, a free live streamed concert is still going to be outweighed by the fees of accommodation and flight tickets that your core fan base has now locked themselves into because you've only cancelled it 1 week in advance. So again, if you were to post the same announcement 1 month in advance, then you would be able to cancel out the ticket costs, the accommodation, and the flight costs, so that this would now be a net positive. But as it is, it remains a net negative because of the lack of notice. There is another section in that Q&A where they explicitly talked about losing their core fan base. How is Niji going to deal with the possibility of core fans, hardcore fans, leaving them behind? And Riku says, I believe it is necessary to reduce the risk of, controversy backlash by not only having a training system in place for their livers, but also by making appropriate releases and responses as a company when an incident actually occurs. And that here is the main problem, because here the livers haven't said anything. It's just the company making the announcements and just the company fucking those announcements up. Because, again, when you look at the way that this has been presented to us, when you look at all of the promises that they made to their shareholders about taking overseas expansion seriously, and when you look at the late cancellation of this event, which was, I think, 2 weeks after what they said, 2 weeks after their Q&A or something, or at least a decent amount of time in between, it lends credence to the idea that the reason why this announcement was so delayed was because they didn't want to give the impression to their shareholders that they were lying to them in this Q&A. So what you get is an impression to both audiences and to your shareholders that you are lying out of your ass, because this really does seem to be a shareholder-driven decision that to only announce this cancellation a week before. Because like I said, they could have announced it sooner. They had multiple opportunities to announce it in a way where the context would have made their audience more understanding towards what they were saying. And again, not to mention the fact that that would also help their audience cancel out all the costs that were associated with attending this event, and therefore make their free live stream of the concert a net positive for everyone concerned. But they didn't do that for whatever reason. So, and another thing that I really want to hammer home is that this way of trying to look good in front of your shareholders is self-defeating. Because even if you don't cancel it too soon after your shareholder meeting, your shareholders are going to be pissed regardless. Because regardless of what you do or say, those ticket sale numbers are still going to be there. You are still going to have to address that in your next shareholder meeting. However, there is still a chance to salvage your relationship with your fans. And Niji, for whatever reason, chose to pass up on that opportunity to instead, maybe, and this is, again, I want to stress this, just speculation, look better to their shareholders. So they really accomplished making nobody happy. So in terms of timeliness and clarity, there's the thing that I talked about before, making sure that they posted their announcement in a context that would have reinforced their message rather than undermine it with speculation. And then there's also the timeliness aspect, where they could have announced it in a way that gave their fan base more time to cancel all of the costs associated with trying to attend that event. Tinkerlin, thank you for the 5. It's possible they actually wanted to, but were too busy negotiating through their own Hobbesian nightmare scape of bureaucratic process. Yeah, I mean, you are right in saying that, because there is a pretty decent chance that the reason why Niji seems so sluggish on making these decisions, so slow to capitalize on opportunities presented to them for their communications, is because they are struggling with bureaucracy. And that is not helped by the fact that in their last shareholder Q&A, they stated very clearly that one of the ways that they are trying to improve their management problems is by expanding the number of workers that are there, rather than simply training those that are already there in a more to be more competent. So again, that bureaucracy, from what we've seen, would probably only get worse going forward rather than better. So that answers how they could have done it in a more timely manner. That answers how they could have, provided more clarity. However, when it comes to proactivity, there is one recurring trend that Niji needs to kill. And that is that whole overpromising, overblowing expectations aspect of their communications. And when it comes to managing expectations, there was a very wise quote made by Rima Evanstar on one of her previous streams. If you're curious, go to her clips channel and search it up. I think it's a clip labeled "Rima gives questionable employment advice" or something. And it is, start by sucking. Niji is in a stage of its career, of its growth, of its existence, where it is no longer possible for them to have big dreams of sold-out concert halls and massive concerts. That is not happening. They've torpedoed their chances at doing that for at least the next year or more, with the whole fiasco back in February and March. This lack of sales on this ticket, this empty concert hall, this is the new norm. And the longer that Niji tries to ignore that and fight it, the more they will set themselves up to fail in these occasions. So again, it is an unfortunate fact when you look at it from the perspective of the livers, when you even look at it from the perspective of the audiences. But it remains true that what Niji has to do is start sucking. The only problem is that because of bureaucracy, because of whatever reasons that holds Niji back from being able to adapt and pivot their messaging, their promotion, etc., they've missed the boat on when they were supposed to get down on their knees. Because you want to start off by setting low expectations. So there was another event, I think, that was posted on the Nijisanji subreddit not too long ago, where they sold out a smaller venue, but again, it looked more positive when it was just that picture of that particular, event. Because again, having a large but empty theater is far worse than having a small but filled one. And the fact that Niji can't seem to recognize that that is the new reality that they've set themselves is what's making all of this worse, is what's compounding all of these issues. Because when you set those expectations so high, when you have to give off the appearance that you are more robust in your fan base, in your business operations, more so than you actually are, you can only ever set yourself up to disappoint the people who are relying on you, who are invested in you. And in this particular case, we've already learned that they don't care about the livers with the whole AR Live cancellation. But this sets a very dangerous precedent for Niji, that they don't care about the fans either. The die-hard fans, the ones that are willing to book flights and accommodation just to attend an event that was mostly not sold out. Again, when we look back on all of this, there are three main things that Niji could have done differently. First, make the announcement in a more favorable context. Regardless of what you do, relying on speculation to fuel your vaguely worded message is unethical, but at least it would have turned out better for them if they had capitalized on 3 of the previous opportunities I named to announce their cancellation. The second thing, present the free live streaming of Summer Jam as a win, not a consolation prize for fans, by announcing the cancellation sooner. Sure, even if you announced it sooner, maybe you piss off the shareholders. Maybe the shareholders feel deceived that you're no longer able to host large events like you promised. But you save your relationship with your fans, and especially when you've explicitly stated that your business, your target demographic has shifted from being a general audience to being a small but dedicated one. This is not a move that you want to, this is not something that you want to neglect. You want to make sure that regardless of what those fans are like, thinking or feeling, that they at least have, they view your compensation as a net positive instead of a net negative for them. Fuck the shareholders. Their bed is made. They need to lie in it. And they are going to be pissed regardless of what you do. Again, I cannot stress enough how negligible this whole cancellation will be for making the shareholders think differently of you. Because sure, you've managed to postpone it so it doesn't occur so soon after the shareholder Q&A. But you've still fucked the event, and you've still fucked the way that fans see your event. So, again, it's not a great idea. And then the third one, this is where proactivity comes in, where you pivot your future events to accommodate a new, smaller target audience, because the fan base you had pre-Selen is not coming back. A lot of fans left during then, and a lot of fans, when they did leave, had left with a caveat that they would return when they see some shift in the way that management is operating, some better treatment of the livers, more respect towards both the fanbase and the livers when it comes to delivering content and events. However, all of that has failed to materialize. So all you're left with are the diehard fans who don't seem to really take on board when stuff like this happens until it happens to them. And again, I can't stress this enough, that is not the fan base that you want to be pissing off when they are the ones that you rely on for your sales going forward. Because in contrast to pretty much every other VTuber agency, Niji is no longer in a position where they can expand, or at least not expand overseas. And it's stuff like this that makes it even harder for them going forward, because like I said before, everything you do, everything you say becomes a precedent for you later when you're trying to promote or say something, especially if you're a large corporation, because whereas people will sympathize with other people, people have no sympathy, rightfully so, with corporations, because a corporation is an inhuman entity that exists only to make money. And the problem here is that Niji has made it very clear that they prioritize money over the people on which their business relies on. The livers, the audience, even to some extent the shareholders. All of those groups have been alienated by this one move to cancel the event in this way. Again, when you look at all of the events that have occurred, you get what very clearly resembles just a joke, where you have setup, where you have the expectations being led on, built up, etc. And then your payoff is just this, a punchline, nothing more. And if you are a fan who paid for this event, who has lost money on flights and accommodation, it's not your fault. You're not to blame for this. And I want to make it very clear that if for whatever reason you do happen to be watching this stream or watching this VOD and you are one of the fans that have been affected by this, I'm not going to tell you to just, cut off Niji or whatever, because I know, we all know that's not how emotional investments work. But I do want to ask that you reconsider your level of investment in this corporation, regardless of how much you feel for the livers that you've supported, regardless of how much you feel for, the idea of Nijisanji, especially Nijisanji En. I ask that you reconsider how much this company actually values you as a person, values your contribution. Because this is not something that a company who actually values its fans would pull. This is not a stunt that they would pull. So please, I ask you to maybe consider that this is not a company that cares about you, or even your Oshis.